So in this video, I'm going to talk through some fundamental principles that will make your applications that you build in Blockworks cleaner, better, easier to use, and more sustainable. Um, it's just going to be a list of different things that are recommended, uh, but not necessarily required. And the reason they're not required is sometimes, despite the recommendation, it's not possible to do exactly what was recommended because the requirement by the customer simply may be different. So the first kind of fundamental principle I'm going to explain is that you should always try and build your module or your blocks or whatever in a way that you as a no coder in theory should not have to come back to stay alive and for the customers to continue being able to use them. So just to elaborate on that, I'll give one or two examples. Let's say we have a instructions. So I'm going to create, actually what I'll do is I'm going to create a new module for this because there could be a few different blocks being created here. So I'll just say video 2. Let's pretend we have a list of instructions. Firstly, I'm going to do the way you shouldn't do it. So what I'll do here is instructions 1. Let's just say it is a set of procedures or something for a customer, and they're going to have to come back to these all the time. So one way you could do it, and this is, I would say, the incorrect way, is we create a new field, a new element, and let's just say we're going to create our kind of instructions here, our procedure using the content creator. And we'll just say here are some instructions or procedures that have content. So this is just for the sake of, this might be a whole page explaining a procedure or something. So then, for instance, we'll do one more. Well, what I'll do is I'll just duplicate this block, it'll be easier. So now we'll say instructions to here is a second set of instructions or procedures that have content. So now we go back to the module. Let's just pretend that here's a place where customers can read information about different things. This is perfect if you know for a fact that these are never going to change. And also if you know for a fact that the customer, let's just say it's a quality manager or something, is never going to want to change them. And that, my main point is that you as a no coder, your job shouldn't be managing content. Your job is to build software for the customer to be able to do these things themselves. So this solution isn't very sustainable because just say there's a new set of instructions, they have to come back and ask you as a no coder to go into the editor and build module, build another block, do all that kind of stuff. So in principle, only the no coder who's trained to do stuff in Blockworks should be doing that. And as a result, you shouldn't really be controlling the content. So now we'll say a better method. And we'll say instructions. Oh, I put that in the wrong section. Instructions. And now we'll say instructions list. and I'll just rename this to like view instructions. So let's just say, firstly, I'm going to make a drop down. I'll just make this small again, actually. I will just say instruction title. That was meant to be, oh no, that's not a drop down. This is the title. So now let's say instruction. This time I'm going to do a content editor for user. And we leave all this. Just put in the text for the button. And I'll just create a new row and put this full width. So now here's the instructions list. So let's say instruction 1. This is the content for instruction 1. Submit. Instruction 2. This is the content for instruction 2. So now we've made 2 records. And now we go back to like view instructions. And let's just say this one will be a drop down. Select instruction. And we can do a drop down from block. And we'll say it's the instructions list. The field is title. We don't have to match anything. We're just going to get all of them. And now let's populate here the instruction. Content, we'll call it. And this is going to be a content. So now we're going to actually put the text. This always has to be filled. That's a small bug, because even when you're hiding the button, we still have to put text here. Show content display. Oh no, hide content, we're going to keep that there. Show editor, leave that. Everything else is fine. And then I'll do a populate rule. So we'll populate local field with data from another block. We'll say instructions list. The data required is this instruction content. Local field to populate is content. And then select instruction must match instruction title. So now when we go here, we can load our instructions. So what's the fundamental difference between the top one and the bottom one? Is that in this one, you don't have to come back to this. You're finished. From now, you can train the quality manager or whoever's controlling this to create their own content. And that's the fundamental point of this, that you're giving them the power to do stuff themselves by creating it in a way that they don't ever have to come back in and edit blocks. Easier to maintain, easier to manage, and everyone's happy. So what we might just do is one more example, which would be completely unrelated to that one there. So just to tidy this up a bit, I'm just going to say better instructions method. And I'll just say worse instructions method. And I'm going to add these into it. Oops, wrong one. And I'll do it with this one as well. So let's do one more. let's just say contact details. So where's contact details method, new section. Let's just say there's a company and they have multiple contact details. So we'll just say company details. So we'll just say company name. And then let's just say the customer or your business requires that there's going to be multiple contact details per company. You might say contact person 1, contact person 2, and 3. So now there's a situation where the company can manage, company name, person 1, person 2, person 3. That's fine. However, what's fundamentally wrong with this is what if there's a fourth person? And this goes back to my core point, which is this now causes problems for you as the no coder, because now you have to come back in here. They need you firstly to create a new field, because now one company perhaps has an extra person. So now we'll say company name to person 1, person 4, and then we'll say all the other companies are back to just 3 contact people, or even let's just say 2. So the data isn't structured well, and you don't know for sure when this list ends, or you don't have anything in place. So like I've said at the start of the video, if you know for sure that there'll always be 2 contact people, and you're very confident that the business requirement is completely fine by doing this method, then by all means go ahead with it. So this isn't fundamentally wrong, it's just depending on the scenario. And my scenario that I'm creating here is that you don't know how many contact people you have, and as a result you're just creating fields upon fields. So instead, the method you should be taking is this. So let's say better contact details method. I would say company details. Company name. And let's just give it something else, phone number or something. Well, not phone, because we're going to have multiple contact details. We can just say address. And then what we're going to do is create a second block with the contact details. So it's a very similar situation as the instructions one that I did at the start. So I'm going to add a drop down from block. Company details. Now, unfortunately, I should have given it a different name, but that I know that's the right one because the address is in this one. That was a contact name. We can even say phone number, because this now gives us more freedom. So now we can start. Let's go back and we just add a record or two to the company details. Company 1, address 123. Company 2, address 123. And one other thing I'm going to do is create a results box. So contact information. And we're going to say the company name has to match the company name. Let's just say we're going to show the contact name and the contact phone. After putting in the wrong one there. Contact name and contact phone. We come back to contact company details and we'll just add person 1. We'll do another one. Person 2. Do another one. Just give it different so we know. So now I put in company 2, hit return. I'm even getting the one. So for example, there was a space there, so that was actually my bad in the original entry. So for example, in another place you might have a lookup for contact details, and this makes it much easier to look up because you have the list of data as opposed to using fields to generate more data. It also makes it easier for, again, the same reason as above here, the customer gets to control the contact things, and they also get to put in as many as they want without having to come back to the no coder for more improvements in the software. So that's the kind of fundamental instruction around making sure that the user of the software doesn't have to come back to the no coder unless it's a genuine improvement. But look, once again, a lot of this recommendation is subjective and based on the situation that you've been presented with by the customer. So the next instruction or guideline I would say is to try and avoid blocks with lots of fields. This may or may not be possible depending on your scenario, but in general, it's best that you try and build blocks that do not have loads of fields. And the reason for that is it's just a mix of things. It's performance, it's usability for the person actually using the front end of it. It's complicated to manage. It's complicated for you to maintain as a no coder going into the future. And I suppose our overall point is that it's just quite tricky. And things will get slower, things will get more messy, and it's kind of a case of just because you can doesn't always necessarily mean you should. And as you can see, just as I'm talking, I'm just kind of building a big one as I go, just for the sake of it. But there's no hard rule here other than just use your own judgment. If it's a block in a different way that might make more sense or something, then do. If it's not possible, then that's fair enough too. You just can't. It has to be built this way because the customer is requiring an exact block. But it's just always to think outside the box and just to kind of always keep in mind that, look, maybe you could submit some data somewhere, then they go onto another block. If it's slightly different data, because you have to remember as well, the more fields you have, the larger your data set becomes in terms of exporting. So let's just say this one has, and this isn't even huge, 30 fields, but for example, like let's just input everything here and hit submit. So like if I was running a report, for instance, you're going to have a huge row of loads of columns, which may not be exactly what's desired. Just waiting for the Excel to open. You know, so like I said, there's no hard and fast rule there. It's just keep that in mind when you are designing blocks, that if you know, Blockworks does perform better in situations where they're not massive. So the next fundamental kind of guideline I would be recommending is always try and lead to a point that you're just submitting data in a block. So what I mean by that is always try and work towards generating a simple raw data entry for the customer by creating a form and then they press submit. So to explain clearly as an example, let's say weird data entry method. Let's move this down. Oh, that doesn't matter. I'm going to say good data entry method. So say field 1. Open separate tab. I'll just say give this a rule. Cannot be equal hello. Now we're going to send this data to this block. Let's say we're going to add a new record, choose when the action happens on a button, send data, and then choose the local. And that's fine. What we'll do actually, we'll just go 1 second now. Let's say we'll send it on a condition. No, we'll just leave that. I just want to show you first. Okay, so I've created a block here that basically populates another block. Test. I click send data. And if I go back to the front end of this block, we have our values. So if I click it again and click it a few times, we're getting our values here. Now that's fine. We might have a requirement for that. But now we can see that, for example, like this has a rule that says shouldn't be hello. And if I do this, hello, and I don't press return, for example, I can still send the data. So it's probably a strange example, but really the point I'm getting at here is this only needs one block, and you could have your rule on this field, field one data, and then this field could be always leading to your own submission, which means you don't need cross blocks, you don't need anything else. So I guess the fundamental point I'm getting at is always try and build it in a way that you've got clean forms that are just submitting data. It may not be possible. There could be other reasons that this is happening. Maybe it's for an inventory system or something, and the person wants to click here. But in general, always try and see, is there a solution where I could be simply creating a form that submits data? So the next point is about communication with us as the provider of the software. Um, so we have a kind of a rule of thumb that we like to tell anyone doing no code. If you found a process kind of complicated and you had to do a few things just to achieve what you're doing, let us know, and let us know a better way it could be done that you think. So I'm going to give a small example of feedback we've received, and we haven't implemented the solution yet, and that's why it's a good example, because we can show you exactly the problem. Let's do a new block. Block with data, and then drop down. So I'm going to create a block with data, and then I'm going to do a drop down field. So filter and data. Look up data one. I'll just do a few. Okay, so we have block there, simple. Oh yeah, one more thing actually. I'll just go back here and just do one more lookup. Second lookup, data tree. So here is an example of an inefficiency. Supposing I want a block that only looks up the values that had lookup, and I never want any more. I'm never going to be changing that. I need to create a plain data field that is like lookup, plain data field, and I need to give it the default value, and I need to also trigger this. Then I need to create my drop down from block and use that as the filter. Select field is data, and then we're going to say the lookup must equal the filter. So we've been given feedback recently that this feels like a pointless step. So now we're getting our field that are just equal lookup. The person told us they never want to change. They'll always be going to be looking up the data and keeping in line with trying to keep the blocks as simple as possible. Here's an example where they have reached out to us with a suggestion of being able to set the value here. So it doesn't always have to be a field you're looking up, or sorry, a local field. It doesn't have to be a value from a local field. It can actually just be a value. So you could literally type in lookup here, and that reduces the amount of fields. For example, we've started doing that with things like conditions. So like in our mail alert, for example, you can actually just type in the value, you know, and that is that's the feedback that they gave us, and that is how we improve the software and how it makes your life easier as you keep doing your development on Blockworks. So the overall instruction here is to basically, if you find yourself doing several steps that seems a bit meaningless just to achieve your goal, contact us. Simple as that. And we're always looking to improve Blockworks, and we'll always try our best to bring it into an upcoming release. So for now, that's just some of the guidelines that we recommend. We're putting together more, and we might make another module in the future that has more thorough ones. But those are just the guidelines, we'll say, for approaching the build of a block. In the next video, we're going to talk about the guidelines for keeping things nice and tidy, but they're all associated with the one thing, which is about the visual display for the user. Thank you. Goodbye.